All right, what's up, world? Welcome back to the best movie podcast in Texas. I'm gonna give away a little more
It's
significant
regional.
detail.
It's nowhere else.
Yeah, yeah.
Here, we got it
It's
here.
the regional best movie podcast. They're talking about the top 10 movie podcasts with Mike and Mulley. Mulley's across from me. What's good, man?
What's good?
We're back again with another episode, and hopefully you are also back with us, listening at home, at work, in the shower, in the car, on the airplane. Who knows, at your baby daddy's house, at your baby mama's house. Wherever you are, we just hope that you're tuned into us because we have another dynamic top 10 list for you today. And we hope you like franchises because we're back to franchises again with the top 10 sequels that were better than the original. And this was going to be for me, it's going to be a very comic book movie heavy list. As many of you listeners know, if you listened to this podcast in the past, you know I'm not really the biggest fan of that genre, but we're talking about franchises, and that's the biggest draw for multiple entries in a franchise.
That's true.
Is comic book films. So that's what we're going to do today.
And Mike, going to this, we've talked about this before, but I'll just reiterate it for those who don't remember or haven't heard us before. Oftentimes the original movie that starts off a series of movies, whether it be 2 or 3, however many more sequels that it spawns off, the original is hard to beat because the original introduces us to the concept, introduces us to the characters, and it's the establishing movie for the rest to build upon. So to say that a sequel is better than the original, it's really hard for me because I really feel the elements of what made it good and original and good enough to spur on a bunch of sequels, it's difficult to overcome because it is the introduction. It's the thing that started it all. It is the keystone. It's the foundation of everything. So if you're saying that a piece above the foundation is a more important piece than the foundation, it's difficult for me to say.
Okay, so let me stop you right there. You said more important. For me, I keep it very simple.
Yeah.
To me, I just look at, or my metric for this list anyway, just in general, I want to talk about sequels better than the original, is I ask one simple question. Is it more entertaining than the first? That's how I went.
So that's your metric.
That's my metric, yeah.
Gotcha. And I agree with that. I think that's a metric that I followed as well. I mean, because look, we had to find 10 for this list, so clearly I found some. But one of the bigger parts of contention for me when trying to discover movies for this list was the actual definition of the word sequel. Because to me, a sequel, I don't know why prior to me investigating this, but when I thought sequel, I always thought direct sequel,
Like
not
part two.
multiple sequels.
Yes.
Always this movie directly following the original film was a sequel to me.
Mm-hmm.
The third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh Police Academy, that didn't qualify to me as a sequel to the
Of
original.
all the movies for you to say.
Well, how many movies have had that many sequels outside of Fast and Furious?
True. True.
All right. So not a lot, but I know that Police Academy had a bunch, Jaws had a bunch, and Superman's had a bunch, like 4. But so the question is, what's the definition of sequel? And I found that the direct definition of it is any movie that is spurred and follows the original. That is technically considered a sequel. So even if it's the 4th or 5th iteration, even if it's Fast 9 or Fast 10, technically it's a sequel of the Fast and Furious original.
Yep.
So in our list, the definition is anything, really, any movie that is spurred from that original movie that isn't a direct shoot-off necessarily, it's not like a Hobbs and Shaw necessarily of the Fast and Furious universe.
Yeah, we're not talking about
necessarily a
spin-offs.
Spin-off. It is a sequel that continues that same storyline with maybe not the same actor, but the same character. So, I mean, technically in that definition of what a sequel is, like the James Bond original movie from the 60s with Sean Connery would be the original. I don't remember what that name of that is, Dr. No or whatever that first James Bond movie was. Mm-hmm. But something like GoldenEye or something like Casino Royale is technically a sequel of that original based on the definition. To me, I did it a little bit more direct.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are the number 2s, but not necessarily. And it did allow me to open up the list a little bit. So
Okay, well, we're on the same page because I did my list.
Yeah.
And then had a conversation with my sister again. she's like the producer of my list.
Yeah, we need to actually give her. Well, no, we shouldn't give her credit. We're going to have to start giving her money. Although this podcast doesn't make any money, but when we do, we can't be having somebody on the producer making money.
No, but we were talking about sequels, and actually my niece chimed in as well, and she was like, "Well,
golly, we got to pay more people."
Yeah, I know. And she's 18. She's gonna be an intern, work for free. She's like, technically, couldn't a sequel be something after two if there is? And I was like, well, no, but let me go Google it. And then I got the definition. You got it. It's
just learning, folks. He's learning from me
to Google. Well, I needed the definition because I was like, well, maybe they're right, because I felt like if we just stuck with just part two of a franchise, then we're only gonna probably have 10 and have a lot of overlap.
Right.
But if you do multiple entries in a franchise, anything after the first one, that opens up the world to a lot more possibility. So thankfully, thank you, Google, for the definition. Merriam-Webster.
Give Google a shot. Yeah, but no, I mean, you're learning from me in the sense that you're actually doing some research. That's more of what I was towards a list.
For sure.
That's definitely new for you.
It is. It is. So in the just in case we have overlap, I have 15.
Ooh.
So because I want to try to get a full 10.
Yeah.
And I know we're gonna have at least 5 or 6 that overlap.
Okay, that's good.
How many did you have?
I think I just have 10.
Oh, okay.
But you never know. There might be some honorable mentions.
That means you got some honorable mentions. That means
you got us covered. So. All right, go ahead. Hit us off with your first one. What's you're not necessarily top movie, but your first movie of sequels that were better than the original?
A bunch of these are going to be classics. Everybody's seen them, so I'm not going to really dive too much into them.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one, Terminator 2, 1981.
It's my first one.
It's on your list, exactly. I knew it would be. Again, when I talk about thinking of movies for this list, okay, is this movie more entertaining than the first? This one is, in every way possible.
Every way.
7 years apart, time had passed. 1984 was the original. 91. You talk about technological advancements in CGI and graphics and visual effects. A lot of this stuff in this movie holds up to today.
Yeah, it still looks.
It looks really good. Like the T-1000 being a liquid metal Terminator, can mimic anybody it touches. Like the morphing, the special effects, the explosions, the action sequences, they all hold up really well. Mm-hmm. Which is wild to say because we're talking 34 years ago now that movie came out.
Jeez.
And we've seen a bunch of movies that rely heavily on visual and special effects and green screen, blue screen, and every other screen in between. So for this to kind of be like the pinnacle of the beginning of that era is really impressive to see what James Cameron could pull off at that time. He's kind of like the number one spectacle director, I think, of our time.
Yes.
And he's always creating something that we've never seen that's very, very outside the box.
It pushes the limits.
You could say Christopher Nolan's behind him, but I think Cameron is the number one guy.
Cameron's been around longer.
Been around longer as well. So, but we'll see who ends up number one at the end of their respective careers. But I think as of now, even though I'm not the biggest fan of the Avatar stuff, I think he's still number one because, like you say, he's done it longer. Yeah. I think he's a better representation of a true cinematic visionary when it comes to what he can dream up. Because, again, even though I'm against the Avatar stuff to some degree, he's had to wait for technology to catch up for him to even film it because he's had these ideas years before we could do it. Same thing with, I think it was even Terminator 2, Terminator 1 was all practical effects because that's all we had. We were limited by our knowledge. But
I believe he wanted to do a liquid metal Terminator in the first one. He just couldn't do it because it just hadn't, with the special effects part, we hadn't caught up yet.
So in a lot of ways, in the past, I think even on this podcast, I've kind of said I don't really respect that he's waited because he could have just done other projects in between. But now, in hindsight, I look back on it, it's like, no, I do respect it because he's just waiting for this idea. Like, it's almost like each one of his films are his passion project because he's got the idea. He's waiting for technology to catch up, and then he goes out and he does it very well at a very high level, one of the highest levels of all time. Yeah. It's one of the reasons why his movies are continuing to be talked about to this day. And again, T2, like, I can watch this movie probably once a week, and I've seen it a million times on TV, on DVD, in theaters. Not in theaters. The first one I saw was VHS, but and also again through my reaction channels. I've watched this movie on at least 10 different reactors on YouTube, and it never gets old. Like, it's not that I'm getting anything new from it, because after a certain amount of time, you kind of peak with what you can get out of it. But the story is so powerful, and again, we're in the middle of this, or I guess the genesis of AI, and everybody's just saying, "Oh, this is Skynet for real." So everybody makes references back to Terminator 2
Yeah.
that are relevant today, and a lot of people are fearful of AI, and other people are not. And I think a lot of it kind of is because of what we've seen in Terminator. To be honest with you, it's kind of spurned a lot of, well, our creation is going to be the end of us, of end of humanity, and you already kind of have that in the workforce. AI and robots are taking over jobs that previously humans had to do. You go to your local grocery store, Walmart. There's no physical cashiers. There's no person checking you out. They're all these machines that you scan the barcode and that's it.
And it'll be robots that'll be going down the aisle scanning items, and
Yeah.
that was that's Terminator 2 directly, Terminator 2 Skynet stuff,
Right.
there.
But I mean, again, the story is great. The acting is great. The ramifications of everything that came before in the Terminator 1 that carry over to Terminator 2. Like it again, like you said, it builds upon that, but takes it to another stratosphere to me. Where it's like this could possibly be the best sequel of all time.
I agree. Yeah, it's one of the greatest movies ever made, and it was a sequel, and it was way better, in my opinion, way better than the original. Obviously, the original is where the whole storyline comes from, but the idea the idea of it is germinated from Terminator, the original. But it was filmed, although it's only, like you mentioned, only 6 years apart. It's like it was filmed in a different era with a way lower budget. It seemed almost like a TV movie type budget, and a feel to it. It's a lot more grittier, a lot more guerrilla filmmaking feel to it. It just feels low budget.
Majority, I think,
Terminator 2 is a huge spectacle.
Like 85-90% of the first one is shot at night.
Yes.
A lot more daytime scenes in T2, so that speaks to, technologically advanced in filmmaking as well.
And just the look of Linda Hamilton and the 80s look of her in the original, and then the buffed psycho ward military soldier look of her in the second one. It'd be hard to believe it's only six years separating those movies.
Yeah.
It looks so different. It looks a lot cleaner in two. One's really 80s style. It's really dated. The technology feels dated. And it just feels, I mean, don't get me wrong, Terminator 2 has also had some dated stuff in it too. But it really feels 80, and there's a whole place scene in a nightclub that they're blasting 80s music in, and they're all dressed all crazy.
Yeah.
It just feels really like it was filmed in an entirely different era. And it feels like a way different, lower-ended movie. And what 2 does so great is it takes who the villain was in 1, which is Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator character, and flips it on his head and makes him the hero character in 2. And that trend's right, because in the mid 80s when the original Terminator came out, Schwarzenegger was still new and still hadn't gained that popularity, star power yet. But by Terminator 2, he was at the max level of his star power. So he was a superstar at the time. And for him to come back as the surprise hero at the as a little twist in this movie, if you didn't know, it's one of the things that makes this one of the best sequels ever.
100%.
All right, so we started this talking about the origins of our list and where we get the idea from defining the word sequel, and it's ironic because I had a direct sequel in Terminator 2 on my list to start too, but now I have to go down to my next selection, which is actually the 4th movie in the series. But this movie is so good. To me, when I think about this character, it defines this character.
Crossing the X, I already know what it is.
And when this, I don't know if you do. And if you in this character, to me, when people quote this character and quote things that are said from this franchise, it's always from this movie. And the movie for me is Rocky 4.
Oh, yep.
Yeah. Okay. He crossed out too premature. And immature. So Rocky 4 to me is the quintessential Rocky movie. Now, there's an argument to be made for Creed, I don't, Creed is also in that, but I feel like it's more of a bit of a shoot off. And the Creed, all three movies probably should just be characterized as a franchise
That's how
to
I look at
themselves.
Creed. I look at Creed as separate. Yeah.
Right. Some people online didn't. But to me, when it comes to Rocky, I've seen all of them. And Rocky 1, it's the first one, but it is extremely dated.
It's bad.
It's extremely. It's okay. It introduces the character, and there's a struggle there, and it's not as grandiose as what 4 is. And 4, you got to remember that when this movie came out in '85, it's kind of the height of the Cold War. So the U.S. and Russia were really at odds in culture across the board for us, and there was a real not only kind of a hatred between the countries, but also a unknown about war and about nuclear power, and there was just so much that was up in the air about the relationship between the two and the commies and all that stuff. That
Can
we don't
you say that?
I think so.
Okay.
Because it is accurate. It is.
It
That's
is.
what they were called back then.
Right.
And I think particularly of like movies like Red Dawn and The Day After is a movie that dealt with post-apocalyptic nuclear war, like the day after the nuclear fallout happens, what happens to us. And there's all that's kind of behind this fear of what the war could be between these two superpowers. Rocky 4 really played in on that, but it also, by the end of the movie, kind of resolves the differences between the two. So much so that Rocky is having his name cheered in the heart of the Soviet Union because of the grit and the strength and his ability to overcome his dire circumstances that even the Russian people in the movie were able to appreciate him and what he was able to do, and came away with a mutual appreciation between the two countries is what you feel like. He was almost like Rocky went over there and became the ambassador. For America.
Yeah, exactly.
By the end of this movie, but basically, if you've never seen it, it's a must see. If you've never seen a Rocky movie, this is the one to see. And all the things like the montage is famous montage in this movie where he is bad. Whereas Dolph Lundgren's character, who is this Russian machine, basically of a huge man who's at the height, using the height of technology at the time to make his body basically iron, so that he is the ultimate boxer, and one that kills Apollo Creed. Spoiler in this movie. And steroids. Definitely steroids. A ton of that. Whereas we're supposed to believe that Sylvester Stallone builds his body through the traditional means, through hard work and grit and running and lifting logs and doing stuff like out in the wilderness of the Russia in the freaking winter. And he's building his body up to get ready for this match. And it's about revenge for the death of his friend. It's about and then it becomes more than just that, because when Dolph Lundgren's character comes to the U.S. to fight Apollo Creed, it's everything USA. It's red, white, and blue everywhere. They're dancing. They're playing. James Brown comes out and is singing and dancing and
living in America.
He's Apollo Creed wears those American striped shorts, but then it's flipped on its head when it has to be done in Russia for Rocky to get a rematch. Well, not even a rematch. They didn't actually box the first time, but to get the match to get revenge. And it's a complete opposite. It's all Soviet Union. It's all like buttoned up. Gorbachev is standing up there, and watching the fight, and it is all steeped in their culture. So, the quintessential Rocky story didn't even happen until the fourth movie, and that's why it's the best sequel in that series and one of the best sequels ever made.
Well said.
Although it's not technically in my mind a sequel, it is the fourth. It is continue the original.
Google told us, man.
You got to go with Google.
All right, great choice. I'm just gonna dive right into the MCU. I know this is on your list.
Okay.
I'm actually gonna do these back to back because they're both in the MCU, and I'm sure you got them both.
You're gonna get no flack from me.
So the first one is Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
It is on my list.
As I figured it would be.
Dang.
And then the second one is Thor: Ragnarok.
It is on my list.
It's on your list.
Dang. Well, luckily you got 14.
That's true. 15. Again, that kind of like what I said with Terminator 2. And again, the marriage, how I chose my list, movies on my list. Can't talk today.
That's difficult for having a podcast.
Right. People
Can't
don't
really talk much
realize.
today.
Everybody wants to be a podcaster, but you don't realize how hard it is to talk for extended period of time.
And Mike is a talker.
I am a talker.
So
for me to say I'm struggling on a podcast
that's difficult.
where all you do is talk, to try and come up with a succinct, independent thought isn't as easy as you think it is until you have the mics on.
Well, all they would have to do is listen to some of our early podcasts, some of which you have will never publish, to know that it took time for us to get to this part, and we're still struggling.
Because those are like the...
you think we're bad now? You should have heard us back.
I'm going to call those the Tarantino tapes. Because, he has that one film he says nobody will ever see.
We're going to release those. You do that on Patreon, wouldn't you? You do that. We'll make that an exclusive on Patreon one day. You're going to listen to some of the original Lost podcasts.
I'm already unintelligible now. Imagine how those episodes are going to sound when people listen to Mike.
They sound like they're recorded with a potato, too.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
pretty much.
Yeah.
So, Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
I love that movie.
Most people are going to say, a lot of people say that it's the best movie in the MCU.
I can agree with that.
Definitely the best sequel in the Captain America franchise.
Absolutely. Well, Civil War is pretty good, but yes.
It is pretty good. A bunch of people, they kind of look at that as like Avengers 2.0.
It really is.
And it really is. Because, everybody's in that. Robert Downey Jr. is in that. All the other MCU characters that have been introduced up to that time are in this movie for the most part. Sans Thor and Hulk, basically. But yeah, Winter Soldier, this is one of the most grounded movies in the MCU, which is kind of shocking that people think this is one of their favorites, because we think about comic book movies, we think about larger than life, grand scale, like gods and monsters, when this is just a simple guy that is at peak human strength. He's got a shield, and he stands for, I don't even really say he stands for America, he just stands for what he believes is right. Mm-hmm. And I think initially he stood for America in the first Avenger, the first film. But this one, he kind of sees that everything is not what he thought it was. And he starts to then he just becomes this character who, from this point on moving forward, I'm just going to fight for what I believe is right. And for the betterment of just the people. No secrets, no lies, no secret agenda, that kind of thing. But this is really kind of categorized as like a political thriller for the most part, which is, I love that subgenre of like crime dramas and thrillers, is anytime you add politics and like secret organization and espionage, like this is like a heightened spy thriller. Now you have Black Widow in this, who is a spy. You have Captain America, again, super soldier. So he can stand toe to toe with some other characters in the MCU, but he also can't against others like Thor and the Hulk. But what makes this movie so great is that they're expanding on the MCU as a whole, and also the character that is Captain America and the man that is Steve Rogers, who at his core, again, he's just going to do the right thing at any given time. He's going to go in head first and not worry about, the dangers of it and that kind of thing. So, and you can't really tell him what to do. You can't tell Steve Rogers what to do, because he's going to do what he wants to do. Because he just believes that everybody else is just, they're playing their own angles. And he's like, we don't do angles from where I come from. We just do the right thing. And I don't know, it's just kind of hard to say. Like, I've said what I can say about it. Well, I think it's the best sequel in the franchise. Steve Rogers is my favorite character in the MCU. I know a bunch of people lean more towards Iron Man. But Steve Rogers is he's like the salt of the earth guy, very down to earth. And he's like the guy I would expect to show up and fight for the people, versus some of the other characters we've met in the MCU that they all do kind of have their own agenda. Like Tony Stark has his own angle. Nick Fury, Black Widow, for the most part. Even Thor has his code. The Hulk has his code. But Steve Rogers is just for the American people at the end of the day. That's it.
I will say that what Winter Soldier represents is a turn in the character. Because in the first Avengers, Captain America is seen as the apple pie, all-American good guy, but the world, and they even refer to him in the first Avengers as like the ultimate soldier. He follows orders. He is, that's kind of what he is. He is the ideal soldier for them to advertise. They actually use him as advertisement in the first movie to get war bonds to help the war. Not as a super soldier.
Yeah, they use him as propaganda.
Propaganda.
Yeah.
Because he's the ideal. And, an ideal soldier always follows orders. Well, Winter Soldier, in this movie, it's a turn for that character, an important one, because it impacts what he does later on when it comes to signing those, deciding not to sign those Sokovia Accords. It's all part of what was started here in Winter Soldier, where he's not simply just following orders anymore, because he already has known, and he finds out in this film that you can't always trust the people that are giving the orders, that they're doing the right thing, or the thing when it violates his own personal principles, he'll follow his personal principles over following a blind order. That's the critical turn between the first movie and the second movie that leads him to become estranged from the Avengers eventually down the road in Civil War, and then his ultimate return back when we get back into the Avengers
Infinity War,
and through into Endgame. So it's a critical part of the character arc for him. So he is the ultimate soldier in the first movie, who even sacrifices his own life to stop a bomb from hitting New York City. And by the time we get into Winter Soldier, we're starting now, he doesn't know who he can trust.
Yeah.
And he learns from this movie, and by the end of it, that he has his own moral code that he is going to follow no matter what. Even if it turns the entire agency against him, he has got to root out this evil that's within S.H.I.E.L.D. itself, and the people that give the orders. He starts to question those orders and begins to try to figure out who he can trust, who he doesn't. Ultimately, the answer is trust his own code and trust his own morals, and that's what he does. And that carries him over into Civil War too, because when he's not so suddenly the ultimate soldier that follows orders is not so willing to sign those accords by the time it gets to Captain America Civil War. It's a different person.
Yeah.
Where he is fighting, of all people, Iron Man, about being under government sanctions and rule. Like he's not. What happens when what the government wants and what's right are different and opposing, and then you just have that feeling where Captain America is going to do what's right. Where I think if you came from that Captain America first movie, he may just follow orders because that's what he was trained to do.
Right.
So that's a critical turn in that character's arc. Makes you. I think that's what makes him your favorite character. Because if he didn't have that and he just followed orders in Civil War, he would have been fighting for probably Tony Stark, who's the more rebellious of the two, to get under government. Well, we got to get this under control because we're hurting people. So, but that's not how it was. It was flipped.
It was.
So that's interesting. Okay, so that was the first Marvel movie that you wanted to mention, and it was on my list as well. And then you mentioned another one, Thor Ragnarok, which is also on mine.
Yeah, so I'll let you take this one.
Well, I want a lot of input from you for this, so I'll be very brief. Like, to me, the first Thor movie was very limited in a way because a lot of it took place in a very small town. So I thought, that just kind of showed small budget. But the more that I've seen the movie, the more I liked it. But initially, I didn't get why everybody loved this movie. I thought it was just kind of okay, just fine. The more I've seen it, the more I've liked it. So I think the more I've gotten it. 2, The Dark World. Thor: The Dark World was a disappointment, although there are still good things to be had from it. Not probably the worst of the Thor movies so far, although Love and Thunder is in that mix.
Oh, it's not in the mix. It's the worst one.
But Ragnarok was probably I haven't seen everything that he's done, but the Taika Waititi.
Oh, Taika Waititi.
Yeah, I think that's probably been his best movie that I've liked so far. And it really was a significant change to the character, and one that Chris Hemsworth is now just known for his kind of comedic turns, and he's able to illustrate power. But also there was this kind of goofiness that was introduced in Ragnarok.
Yeah. That
really was really fun and made it fun. Of course, having the Hulk appear in the movie also helped a lot, I think. But the jovial Thor was great. It was so much fun. The jokes that were to be had. Guess Jeff Goldblum's introduction was so much fun. The rock guy that Tiki voiced.
Korg.
Korg. The introduction of new characters. It was a good time. Unfortunately, that went too far in Love and Thunder. The next movie, it wore thin. But for this, it was the perfect tone, and Thor Ragnarok, and I don't know, it's the best movie of the Thor movies by far.
Yeah.
To me.
I almost, it would go against this list, but I almost want to make the argument that because we're introduced to Thor as like he's supposed to be this, I think he says it in Infinity War, 1,500-year-old like galactic warrior basically. Like all he knows is fighting and protecting the Nine Realms. That's what Asgardians are basically. That's their role in the cosmos. So I can almost make the argument that Ragnarok is too far a cry from that type of character. But it's like you said, the movie's entertaining, the jokes for the most part hit, and it's not over the top. They don't take it too far, really one way or the other. They don't go so far that it's a comedy. They don't go so far that it's a straight action flick either. It's a great blend of both. Again, bringing in Hulk, we found out where he's been since he leaves in the Quinjet at the end of Age of Ultron. We find out where he's been. So we get a reunion there, and we get a rematch between the two of them in a fight. We get Loki. Anytime you get Loki and Thor together, that's always a good time. And then also bringing in another Asgardian in Tessa Thompson's character as a Valkyrie.
Yes.
That was a great addition to the Thor history, basically, of Asgard history as well.
And would continue that character on into Avengers Endgame.
And then even bringing in, so the only complaint I have about the film is that they killed off Odin, but that's the catalyst for bringing in the main villain of the film, which is Thor and Loki's sister, Hela, played by Kate Blanchett. And to me, she never looked hotter in green and black. Like you put her in green and black, like I was head over heels for her. But and they also made her a formidable foe for Thor. Really, he couldn't be. He couldn't actually defeat the evil. He had to figure out a way to get rid of her using other methods than just straight up attack.
Well, he just sacrificed Asgard.
His whole world, yeah.
But Asgard's not the place; it's
a people. Yeah.
That was the main theme of that. Yeah.
And then we get Thor basically developing like a new power, or basically leveling up to be like God level status, which is really cool to see. And I kind of wish we got a little more of that in this movie. But there was just so much going on in the film with all the different characters, the different character dynamics and relationships, that I understand you could only give us little slivers of each thing, and it's still a great concise story. And to me, that's why it makes it the best one in the franchise.
I agree. I don't think there's anything else to be said about that. So yeah, that's Thor Ragnarok. If you're a fan of superhero movies, you've absolutely seen it. And if you're not and you haven't seen any of the Thor movies, that'd be the one to watch for me. All right, so when we think of sequels that are better than original, this is the first movie that I personally think of, although Terminator 2. Would you be surprised that I didn't even think of Terminator 2 off the bat? Like when I researched it and saw it on some other list, I was like, of course. Why didn't that come to my mind first?
No, I can forgive that.
But it was so impactful that I put it first on my list, because I was like, that's the easiest one of all time. But the one I first always think of is underrated, and I don't know if a lot of people have seen it. I would assume so, and because it really cemented Chris Tucker's fame, I believe. But it's Rush Hour 2 with Jackie Chan and him as the unlikely odd couple duo.
I'm loving this choice because I never would have thought of this on my own.
Oh, good.
I'm loving this choice.
Rush Hour 2 is maybe the greatest sequel to just a pure sequel to another movie ever made. And because not only does it continue with the dynamic, it places it in a different environment, and it just raises the bar in every category. In every way that it could raise the bar, it did. And it raised it off a really good movie to make it this is a great movie because of it. Now, the first Rush Hour movie, basically the idea is it's really a Chris Tucker, Jackie Chan vehicle. And Chris Tucker at the time, a very young, coming off of Friday. I don't even know if he'd done it before or after the original Rush Hour. But Chris Tucker was just coming into his own, and as a movie star. And I don't even think he was considered a major movie star. I don't know if he has ever been. But but he's this movie Rush Hour kind of cemented him into the public eye, and Jackie Chan was rattling off movies left and right that were coming to Hollywood, and not just staying overseas, and so the combination of the two was magic, and those two together, and the surprising comedy, I guess, that not a lot of people knew Jackie Chan could do, especially in English because it's not his native language, and then combined with the street smarts and language of Chris Tucker, who's freaking hilarious, right? And you could put those two together, and it was just that's what made the first film. So the idea of the first film simply was that there was an incident with the Chinese ambassador in Los Angeles. So they asked for a Chinese cop, I think a detective, to come over from China to come to the U.S. to help find a kidnapped girl. I know that's the second one. To be part of this investigation. And he's paired up with a L.A. cop who played by Chris Tucker, who is aspiring to be part of the FBI, but it really is kind of the joke of his precinct. And he thinks he's better than he is. And so they send him on what they call this very important FBI mission to go get this Jackie Chan's character, pick him up at the airport. And they, but the real underneath reason for having Chris Tucker, who they think is kind of a terrible cop, really, is to just get him out of the way and get him off this investigation. But it changes when these two are both, by outside forces, just wanted to be sidelined, and they end up coming together and defying both of their respective employers.
You're covering part one.
Yeah, because part one is. You're right. I've gone into too much detail.
I was like, wait a second, what's happening?
Part one takes place in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Part two takes place in Hong Kong.
Right.
That's the flip. It's
Okay.
It's in the second one, Chris Tucker comes on vacation. He thinks to China to have vacation with his friend Jackie Chan, but they end up working a case, and Chris Tucker has no idea that they're supposed to do this, and they get in this. A case that's involving the death of Jackie Chan's father, and they get deep embroiled into it, and it's just it's a continuation of the story. It's the flipping of the atmospheres, different locations, and so everything that was L.A. and U.S. related, all those jokes, and they flip it, and it's all now Asian related and Chinese related, and it's so good. The action scenes are better than the first. The comedy between the two, the chemistry is way better. Everything just gets notched up to an entirely new level. And by the end of it, even the blooper scenes at the end credits are better. Yeah. Everything in this movie is better.
Yeah.
The acting's better. The overall look is better. The comedy's better. The Chris Tucker being a fish out of water, that's so much better than Jackie Chan being a fish out of water in America, which was funny. Chris Tucker takes it to an entirely new level. There's a problematic P. Diddy scene in the film. Like, there's so much stuff going on that it's just so good. To me, the greatest sequel ever made so far. Is it better than Terminator 2? It's hard to say that because Terminator 2 is so good. But let's say maybe the if you're talking about action comedy, greatest action comedy sequel ever, maybe greatest action comedy film ever made. Is Rush Hour 2. I know it's a lot, and I'm hyping it way too much.
Bad Boys, Lethal Weapon.
No.
You're putting this above those?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, because it doesn't just deal with Lethal Weapon is like two American guys. This is like two different cultures. I guess it's a whole other culture thing that comes with Jackie Chan. Jackie Chan's action scenes are not only fun and funny, they're expertly made. He's doing all of his own stunts because that's what he's famous for. So it's him doing it. And the bloopers at the end can't be beat because they show him doing them. And they're super funny. And then Chris Tucker at the time was like the new Eddie Murphy. Like everything that he touched was so hilarious.
Wow.
He has this whole new, now I'm not saying he ever became that, but it was on the fringe of that. But everything he does is so original and unique to him. And it's hilarious. So, yeah. I know I'm hyping it way too much, and people are going to go watch this afterwards and be like, it was okay, because I've hyped it up too much, but I really love this movie, and I keep going back to it over and over again when I want a good laugh It's so much fun. And you combine that laughter with the action scenes. It's just there's nothing that's been like that, and nothing since has been like that out there
Okay.
to me.
All right. No, all right. I'm not even gonna say that. I'll let that ride. I could debate, but I'm not gonna debate because we got 50,000 movies to go through.
Well, no, really. You took 3 of them already on my
It
list.
took my mind too, so we're even.
Right.
That's a great choice though, because I never would have thought of Rush Hour 2. And it's definitely the best of the 3. Absolutely.
God, that's so good. Yeah, 3's not worth it.
No.
1 and 2, solid, but 2 for
And
sure.
not for nothing, like that was the moment I fell in love with Zhang Zi, the female villain of the show, the movie. I love.
We could have had something special.
Yeah.
But you went crazy, man. Love it. I could quote that movie all day.
All right, so this is the time where we go to horror. You know it's going to happen at some point. You just never quite know when.
Well, I know we're not going to cross on this one.
This is Smile 2. So this is
This is recent.
Yeah, this
too.
is last
I'm
year.
intrigued by it too. I could have
Yeah.
watched it. It was available. I was like,
Did you see the first one?
no.
Oh,
But I got to
okay.
talk to Mike about it first.
Yeah.
Mike will tell me.
Oof. I don't know if you could make it, man.
There we go. That's all I got to say.
Okay,
That's
there
all
you
you
go.
got to say.
So again, we've talked about some other sequels on both of our lists that they build upon the initial movie, the first one. And what I like about Smile 2 is they tell a similar story but with completely different characters. Whereas most franchises, they carry the same main characters, the same 1 or 2 or 3 people. Horror films do it, action films do it like Rush Hour.
I mean, that's part of being a sequel. You carry elements.
You do.
But this wouldn't be considered. I mean, they're labeling this as a direct direct sequel, not a spin.
So it's a sequel, really, because the entity from the first one, it's the same infection. That's essentially what this is. So the idea is you get infected by this entity, this demonic entity, and everywhere you go, every person you come across, they just start doing this creepy smile, and that's all they do, and it drives you crazy.
Okay, so you're infected, but do you just see people smiling, but they're not actually smiling?
Right. It's the infection that's making you see these things.
Okay.
And it's warping your perception of reality.
And everybody looks happy, and that upsets you.
Yeah. Well, if you see it, you would agree.
No. I saw that there was a viral ad campaign for this that really
For the first one.
I guess for the first one, where at a baseball game they hired some woman to sit directly behind like a major league baseball game. They got a seat for someone, an actress, right behind home plate.
Yeah.
And she was just creepy smiling the entire game.
It wasn't just there. It was kind of all over the place. They had them in random public
That's
events.
what I saw.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw a few others as well, like public places. They had people just stand there and smile. Like they do like this. They do like a weird head tilt, or they just tilt their head down. They just hold this smile. They don't move. They don't speak. They don't do anything. So it's like they look catatonic with this smile. So it gives off a creepy vibe.
And that makes you go crazy.
It makes you go crazy until eventually the end goal is the demon takes you over, and then you spread the disease to whoever else.
How's it spread? I'm asking a lot of questions, folks. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because this is fairly new, but I'll give you the story if you really want to know. What was the question again?
I said, how does it infect you?
So you have to kill someone in front of somebody else for it to pass on. For you to get rid of it. For you to get rid of it.
God,
So
you gotta get.
So for example, it's me. It's Mike and Mulley, right? And we'll just say Jason. Sorry, Jason, you're my boy, but we're just gonna say you.
He'll never be a guest on this show now.
I'm infected with this
Okay.
this demonic disease.
I'm smiling, Jason's smiling at you.
Right. So for me to get rid of it,
Yeah.
I either have to kill you in front of Jason, and then Jason has it. Whoever witnesses the murder gets the infection. That's how it works.
Okay. And if you want to get rid of it, you got to kill somebody.
You got to kill somebody.
In front of somebody.
Yeah,
else
somebody has to
to
witness
transfer.
it. So if no one witnesses it, you're not getting rid of it. It's still with you. And so eventually, if you don't get rid of it, I think it's kind of like The Ring. By day 7,
You're acting as if I know what happens in the ring.
I thought you would have. Okay, fine. Don't know.
Now he's got to explain the ring. And we're going down a
No,
whole.
I'm not.
And he's going to be like, it's like Halloween. It's like, how would I know Halloween?
no,
and
no.
you're like, okay, I have to explain Halloween to
No,
explain
I
the
don't.
ring in order to explain Smile.
No. By day 7, if you haven't gotten rid of it, then eventually you succumb to the disease and you die.
And it passes on anyway. Or that's how you kill it.
They haven't addressed that yet, actually.
Well, why don't you just let it kill it? Just let it, and then it's done with it, and then nobody ever gets it infected. Oh, I guess it would be a sequel.
Yeah.
All right.
No, and the sequel actually shows what the entity looks like. So the second one really expands in a major way. The first movie, the main protagonist that gets affected, she's a therapist, and so that they go that that mental health route, and then there's some like past trauma that she's dealing with that kind of ties all in. And the sequel, it's about this pop star, who like was at the top, and she had a fall from grace, and she's now trying to go back on tour, and so she gets infected. So, but it was cool because they kind of show a little bit of the behind the scenes of like what a pop star's life is kind of like. Like they're getting pulled in a million different directions to do this photo shoot. You got to do this fan meet and greet. You gotta try on these what outfit's gonna work best while you go on tour. You're always being pulled a bunch of different directions. You don't really have control of your life. So it's kind of funny that you in the Smile universe, the Smileverse, I'm calling it. You heard it here first.
Yeah, copyright.
You're infected by this disease that you don't have any control over, but also you're a pop star. You don't have any control of your life because you're basically employing so many people. They are relying on you to show up and do these events and these things, fulfill these obligations. So there's like the duality of the character, played phenomenally by Naomi Scott, by the way, from the live action Aladdin. And by the way, I love her. I know she's British because I've only seen her in films where she has the American accent, and she actually can sing. So a lot of the performances in the film she does.
As a pop star.
Yeah, so there's just a lot of elements to this that really stand out. This one really makes you start to question reality as the viewer, whereas the first one is a little more straightforward. There's hints of that, but this one they kind of take it full steam ahead. Like you get to a point where something happens and you think the protagonist sees something and it's really not. Like halfway through the film, we're talking second act, and then from that point on, you have to kind of question everything.
Oh yeah,
so you don't know what's true and what's not, which is a great trick.
Like the camera, like you are infected.
Exactly. And then the ending of this film, the ending is like, okay, now where do we go with this? Like, how are you guys gonna introduce this third act of the franchise after ending it this way? Because I don't want to spoil it.
Don't spoil it. It's too new.
It's too new, and it's really genius how they did it because it's just. They just are going to make this thing bigger and better the next time with this ending. So I can't wait.
All right, so if you at home want to go, want to know what the ending is, look it up, or go see the movie. Mike's going to tell me what the ending is after we stop recording, or that I can just go Wikipedia. All right, so Smile 2 is your selection. Okay, so my next one is another dark superhero movie.
You were about to say the name.
Yes. Another superhero movie, but by a director that we both love and maybe is considered the greatest director of our current times, Christopher Nolan. And this is pretty easy. This one's the Dark Knight. The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight. Speaking of people who can't talk on a podcast. Now, I say this with a bit of reservation because I am a big fan of Batman Begins, which is the origin of this Christopher Nolan Batman movie. And I'm considering this just the Christopher Nolan Batman's as just its own trilogy. But I do think The Dark Knight is a better movie, mainly because of Heath Ledger's portrayal of the Joker. That takes it to another level. It really takes the focus off of Christian Bale's character, Batman, and puts it squarely on basically his battle, Jokers, where Heath Ledger just chews up the scenes and everything that he's in, and then of course Two-Face with the Harvey Dent, Aaron Eckhart portrayal. That really is the bulk of this story, and Christian Bale's Batman, which has already been established in the previous movie, is kind of a side character in his own movie because of these two. Specifically, one Oscar-winning performance by Heath Ledger. But I think universally it is accepted as maybe the greatest Batman story ever told on film, but also just a far superior movie to that of the first one, which is Batman Begins. And I agree with it. It's really like a great, a great story and a great performance, and it's takes the Batman story to another level, like the Dark Knight, put it really cemented it into not just people that love superhero movies, but the mainstream. And for a superhero movie, have an actor win an Oscar based on his performance, it was unheard of. Like, nobody, that's ridiculous that Oscar would ever honor a superhero movie until that movie.
Sure.
And the filmmaking, obviously, it's been proven out that the filmmaker was top notch, the acting was superb, and just had all these elements that made it one of the best movies of the year, one of the best superhero movies ever made. Dark Knight.
All right.
Easy selection.
Love it. Knew it would be on your list, so I didn't add it. And I'm going to go to the opposite of Batman.
I never think about you when I make my list.
That's fine. Nobody thinks about me. No one loves me. It's cool. I'm used to
I
it
just
now.
figured if you have it, you have it. But you sniping me left and right.
So you did Batman, so I'm going to do the other side, which is Superman.
Superman.
Superman 2.
Superman 2.
1980 is the year I was born. That's not the reason I chose it. To me, it's just far better than the first
On my
one.
list too.
Oh, for real? Okay.
Keeps yanking them.
I actually didn't think you were going to have this. I thought I got him with this one.
It's close. I like the original.
Okay. To me, it's so there's 4 Christopher Reeve Supermans, Superman films. To me, it's the best one of all 4.
Yeah.
4 is an abomination. 3
Yes.
is just a joke, literally. With the addition of Richard Pryor.
Yeah, it has a difficult scene for me to watch. We talked about it before.
1 takes too long to get to the good stuff, the Superman stuff.
Yeah.
And then 1 or 2 for me, I mean, you've got Superman fighting one of his most iconic villains in Zod and his 2 sidekicks, which we see again in Man of Steel with Henry Cavill. Obviously done much better because of filmmaking techniques and things of that nature. The look. But this was the best one because also it's the one where Lois finds out Superman and Clark are the same person.
For a while.
Yeah, for a while. And then he takes Lois to the fortress. He gives up his powers.
The scene where he gets confronted by the bully.
Goes to the bar, yep.
That's a great scene.
And see, all that stuff is so much better than the first one.
Speaks so much to the character, too.
It does. And then the way he defeats Zod and his minions, and also Lex Luthor, he tricks him.
Tricks them all.
By taking them all to the fortress.
He couldn't trust Lex.
Never.
Can't trust him.
And also the other reason why I think it's better than the first one is Lex's little sidekick, too hokey for me. Didn't like it.
He is very hokey.
Yeah. It should have been Gene Hackman.
Mr. Luthor. Mr. Luthor.
Yes.
Yeah.
The way he tricks Zod and his minions and Lex into thinking he's going back in to give up his powers, and actually he takes their powers away.
Yeah.
I like that twist.
It's great.
To me, when I watch it, I still think that's a great twist.
It's a great acting job by Superman, portrayed by great actors.
I don't think there's any argument. The quintessential Superman.
Yeah, I agree.
Like I haven't seen the Man of Steel, the documentary about him.
Oh yeah.
But I heard it's incredible.
I need to see that.
But when you watch him as Superman, like it's just like this guy is.
He is Superman.
Superman. Like
for so many
he
people,
embodies that guy. Absolutely.
The only thing that I will say, it is slow. That first one, the original for me, has the argument just because it does have to introduce a guy that flies and has all these superpowers and they're doing this is the first time in a movie. They did it for George Reeves and cartoons in the past, but to do this for an actual movie and for people to believe it and love it, they had to do something really special in that first movie for even the second one to exist. But I do think the second one is better. So.
Yeah.
Not to you. All right. This is, man, I know we've got too many superhero movies on this list, but to me, I recently resaw this movie, and I wanted to tell you about it prior to us talking on the podcast, but I said I'm going to hold it for the podcast because it's on the list.
Okay.
So, I think Spider-Man No Way Home, that I just recently saw again, might just be the greatest Spider-Man movie ever. Ever. Even better than the Tobey Maguires, better than the Andrew Garfields, and better than the own Spider-Man Home series that has been with Tom Holland. I think No Way Home is better than that. I'm make the argument that Spider-Man No Way Home, specifically the unrated version that came out that you can watch through digital streaming.
Unrated. It's a comic book movie.
Unrated. It's called maybe it's called
Extended cut.
Extended cut.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
what I meant. Extended cut. Thank you. That movie, it explains a lot more. It's more full. It's way better to me. But to me, I think this is the greatest Spider-Man story ever told in movies. Is this one now? The argument that I had prior to this in my mind was that Spider-Man 2, the Tobey Maguire one, was the best sequel of the Spider-Man series, all of them. But in rewatching this recently, I think with the with the reintroduction of Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire coming into this movie, helping out a Spider-Man during the death of his version of Uncle Ben, which was Aunt May. The reintroduction of all of these old villains, the Sinister Six, basically coming back in. It just has so much of the Spider lore and shows homage to all those old Spider-Men and those movies, and it does it in a way that doesn't distract from what the story is and the sacrifice ultimately that the Tom Holland Spider-Man makes at the end, and the visuals are obviously amazing, but it all seems to work together. I didn't really bump into too much about the multiverse and all this confusion. It kind of filtered through all of that, and the emotional scenes, specifically after Aunt May dies and he is comforted by the other two Spider-Men in a very tear-jerking scene where they both talk about their struggles, is the stuff of movie magic.
That's to me the best scene in the whole movie.
Yeah.
Is when he's comforted by the other two Spider-Men.
Yeah. And then and what's fun is when they're joking around prior to waiting at the Statue of Liberty, waiting for the fight to happen, and they're talking, one breaks the other one's back for them, and they're talking about what is it, I make my own web, you guys don't make your own web, where does it come, what, is there other places on your body that the web comes? It's jokey, it's fun, they feel like brothers by the end of it, to the point where they're like, I love you guys, is what Andrew Garfield says. And by the end of the movie, they're hugging and thank you so much. It feels like family. It feels familiar. It pays homage to those. It's the greatest Spider-Man movie ever made, I think. And it's made that it instantly means it's one of the best sequels ever made.
No argument there.
Ooh.
So much so that we're gonna stick with the Spider-Verse. We're gonna go across the Spider-Verse.
Oh, okay, yes, the animated, yes.
Yes. This is in 2023. We have Miles Morales Across the Spider-Verse comes out. Still waiting on Beyond the Spider-Verse. Whenever that's going to happen, it'll happen.
It feels incomplete, doesn't it? Like it just there's the rest of the story that still needs to be told.
We know that there's supposed to be a part 3, so that's why it feels incomplete. We're waiting for it.
Would Infinity War feel as good as it does if Endgame didn't land? You know what I mean?
It does to me.
Okay. Yeah, it does. I mean,
we had this discussion before.
Empire Strikes Back could be on the list. I'm sorry if it is on yours. A lot of people, that's the best Star Wars movie is Empire Strikes Back, and it also ends in a cliffhanger.
It does, yeah,
an incomplete story.
It does, and so yeah, this one does end on a huge cliffhanger. But for me, it didn't affect me the way I see that it affected a lot of people, where they're just like, oh wait, they felt like almost gypped.
They didn't sell it as part 1.
They didn't.
That's
but
part of it.
When I got to the end, I was excited. Because I was like, oh, whatever's going to come has to be, hopefully, at least as good as this, if not better. Because this is going to be the finality, at least in the animated version, to Miles Morales' story, in this version of his story. But the reason I had this on the list as the, better sequel than the original is it takes everything that worked in the first one into the Spider-Verse and is even better. The jokes, to me, better jokes. The emotional beats with Miles and his parents, especially his mother Rio, when they're speaking under the water tower right before he chases Gwen. That's a moment that my sister and I discuss all the time, and my niece as well. The fact that it's an animated film that people literally of all ages can enjoy from 5 to 45, because a lot of the older crowd that saw this movie are familiar with Spider-Man, just in general, the character Spider-Man, from comic books, growing up as kids, reading those, and the video games as well, how popular those have been. and the action to me is better. The character Miles Morales, the growth you see he has to basically be faced with accepting, with the potential loss of somebody he loves, his father, who we're assuming as his not anchor being. That's a different story.
Well, I mean, but it fits the Marvel universe too.
It is canon events, what they call it. That basically has to happen, and he just refuses to believe that this has to happen. Even though a lot of other Spider-Man, or when they're having the confrontation scene, say this is what it took for us to fully become Spider-Man. Is we had to have this happen, and he just refuses to believe that. He doesn't want people to tell him what they think his destiny has to be. He wants to make his own destiny. He wants to make his own path. So you see a lot of growth in the character, even though I think in the timeline there's not much time that's gone by between Into and Across. So to see the character arc and to see the growth, the first one's about him believing he can do it. He can be Spider-Man and take up the mantle. The second one's about, do I accept fate as it is just because everybody else says it? Or do I, again, like he says, I'm going to do my own thing. So to me, it just builds upon everything that worked in the first one and made it even better.
I agree. I think so. The thing about me, and we talked about this before, is just, man, the main crux of the story is just not quite.
Right.
Now, look, that's the thing. When the next one comes out, if it lands it like everybody expects it to, then I think it enhances what the two was, and
Absolutely.
it's seen as a complete story. But we got a hanging Chad right now, so until that is actually solved, I'm still waiting.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
If I even ever see the third. yeah. I'll wait. All right. So next, this might be a little bit controversial as well, but this is my take on it. For a lot of people, Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, which was the initial original Indiana Jones movie that's kicked it off, is untouchable. Like it's perfect for what it introduced Harrison Ford as the character, the introduction of the character, the feel of that movie. You go back and watch that, and it has a tremendous. I don't know. We've just based every kind of movie like that, which is the treasure hunting, archaeologist type action film. It all is based from that movie. And those are based on serials from like the 30s and 40s, but they are nothing. Nothing can touch that original in that introduction of it, and then the influence that it had on other movies following. Like everything that's archaeology, and then has action in it is always associated and has its roots in Raiders of the Lost Ark. But to me, it's not the greatest Indiana Jones story ever told. To me, that's The Last Crusade. So Indiana Jones and Last Crusade falls on this list for me. Still, directed by one of our greatest directors, Steven Spielberg. Harrison Ford obviously returns in this movie as the main character, but the real difference maker in this movie is the introduction of Sean Connery as Indiana Jones's father. That comedic interaction between those two, between really two legendary action stars, ultimately, and great actors. One played James Bond for a long time. But completely, you don't think at all James Bond when you see this character here. This is just kind of an annoying older father that's this really stickler for, and you can see that's where Indiana Jones got his love for archaeology, was from his father, who was a professor just like him, and has a passion for archaeology, just like Indiana Jones, but it is Indiana who is the one that is more of the action, physical violence type he's more the action guy, and his father's more the scholar, and excited by the journey, and all and where it is a typical older father and son relationship where they can't really stand each other at some points, but they love each other in a weird way. They show their love for each other. Ultimately, Indiana Jones, by the end of the movie, he threatens he has to go through a bunch of trials in order to try to save his father, ultimately, and does so. But the way that they unveil that, the tribulations, the challenges that he has to go through, brilliantly done. The meeting of the night at the end, the solving of the puzzle of which one's the Holy Grail, the chase for the Holy Grail, the going into the old church and the old library and going through the tunnels and solving, X marks the spot, which is a trope that they played on. One interesting tidbit about this Indiana Jones movie is there is a love interest kind of for a little while, but she turncoats. And quickly, it's not about, there's no love interest really in this movie, which is different from the other Indiana Jones movies that we're kind of introduced to. So this is really just mainly a character we get to find out. And it even starts, a lot of people have forgotten, River Phoenix is in this movie, and River Phoenix portrays a very young Indiana Jones. It kicks off this movie an incredible action sequence involving a train and zoo animals and all this crazy stuff.
I would have watched the whole movie of just that.
I wish he would have. Should have. I would love to have seen him a lot more because he's in Sneakers, one of my favorite movies, and I love him.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
But Indiana Jones, it introduces us to his father. It starts to unravel the complicated character that Indiana Jones is. We find out that he's named after the dog. We find out that the relationship between him and his father. We get to peek into that. We get to find out that where it started, where he got his iconic hat from. It reveals so much about the character. It's a fun combo. It goes in directions you don't know it's going to go. It throws in Adolf Hitler in there as well. Like there's so much stuff. Like he gets his book autographed by Adolf Hitler at one point. It's insane, and there's a great blimp scene there and a plane scene. Like it's so good, and ultimately the payoff is one of the best in film history because we actually get to end this quest for the Holy Grail and find it. And it's like he says at the movie, what do you get from all this after losing the Grail? And it's like illumination, and that's really what we get as movie watchers.
True,
we are illuminated by this movie. It's a perfect ending. Running off, literally, riding off into the sunset in this movie.
Yeah,
I've spoken too much. It's so good. It defines everything that Indiana Jones.
Yeah, this whole episode is Mulley's film nerd bag, so I'm just gonna let him.
I'm falling into my
do his
bag.
thing. Yeah. So that was the end of the '80s. I'm gonna go back to the beginning of the '80s with the movie you just mentioned with Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, I mentioned. Oh, I'm sorry.
The only reason, because you were talking about sequels and things of that nature, and you're like, you might not even have this on your list. You were just going on the thing.
Okay.
And I'll let you rock out. But real quick, the only reason it's on the list is because the bad guys win. That's it. I love movies where the bad guy wins. There's no other reason for me to put a movie on the list other than that.
There is.
I mean, there's great stuff in it.
Yeah.
The reveal of Darth Vader being Luke's father.
Yes.
That's a huge thing.
Huge.
One of the biggest twists in cinematic history.
If you weren't around in that time when that happened, like Darth Vader, luckily I was around in that time, very young, but Darth Vader was seen as the ultimate villain. To make him the father of your main hero was insanity. People, talk about losing your mind. Dude, it would be like Captain America finding out that Thanos was his dad. It's nuts.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That would
Never introduced to Captain America's dad.
Yeah, that's true.
If he was blue, a little blue, maybe it makes sense.
Yeah, but like we've talked about this before. I like unhappy endings. You like happy endings in the movies. I like when the villain wins because oftentimes in real life, again, people go to the movies to escape reality, and I get that.
I feel where you're going.
My sister's one of those people. She's like, I don't like movies where it's not a happy ending.
But often in real life, you're right. It's not a happy ending.
Exactly.
A lot of times it doesn't end happy.
It doesn't. And so that's kind of the reason people go to movies, because real life is so somber, downtrodden, and doesn't go the way you want. They go to certain movies because they want to be picked up and uplifted emotionally as an escape from the real world where things don't always go right. Well, for me, I love that because to me, that's a creative choice. We're going to go against the grain because people already expect I'm going to pay $12, $15 to go see a good ending. We're going to do something completely different and leave you in awe. To me, you get a more visceral reaction from the audience if you go against what they expect, and you never expect the bad guy to win. So for that to happen, it's why I pick Infinity War over Endgame, which is not on my list. But it's why I would pick it over that, because the bad guy wins.
Yeah.
So that's why I have Empire Strikes Back on there. And to me, outside of, if we're going to include episodes 1 through 9, it's I put it over Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. To me, it's the best Star Wars film out of all 9. To me,
The only reason it's not on my list is because I do feel the first movie is the perfect movie. I feel like it is a complete story within itself. It didn't need a sequel.
it does. Yeah, it has an actual ending.
It is in. It's a beginning and an ending, and it's. But people loved it so much that they continued it, and then there's an argument. Obviously, it's one of the greatest sequels ever. It is, I think, it is the greatest cliffhanger ever. Like, and the thing is, unlike Infinity War, they didn't reverse it. Like, you not being your father can't be reversed. He was his father, and now how is he going to deal with that? Made people pine for the next movie. They could not wait. Is it real? Is it true? How is that possible? And obviously they foreshadowed it in Luke's trial in the forest where he sees his own face under the mask of Vader. So they told us early that he was. We didn't exactly know what that meant. And then, coming to terms with that in the third one is what really sold it off as well. It paid off.
Right, I agree.
So it's got to pay off. And the thing about Infinity War, like even though the ending, it was a bad one, I knew that they were going to come back. They can't get rid of half the Avengers and half the world. I knew they were. And in my mind, there was speculation in my mind. I was like, they're not going to do time travel, are they? They can't do time travel to fix. Well, they did. So, that was the thing. I was like, I can't believe it. But I still love, Endgame. But yeah, for this, the greatest cliffhanger ever. No doubt. Especially if you were around at that time,
Oh yeah.
I can't imagine that was like, because it's like now we're spoiled with the binge watching of stuff. We just instantly go to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
Yeah.
Where back then you had to wait 3 years to find out the continuation of the story. Like you're waiting right now for
Beyond the Spider-Verse, yeah.
Who knows what's going to happen in the third one? But we'll know in 5 years probably.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, man, that was like one of the greatest stories ever told, that whole complete thing. But right now it's still hanging. All right. Quickly, I'm sorry, I spoke too much about your movie, not even mine. James Bond. James Bond has had a ton of sequels, technically, by the term sequel. Even though the character has changed, and we can organize it by just who played the Bond character.
That's what's in my head. I split them up. Separated between,
But this is to me, this is the greatest Bond movie that's ever been made. And so to me, that really kind of qualifies it as the greatest sequel in the Bond series, because I don't think the first one, which I don't remember if I did, it was so long ago that Sean Connery's not my favorite Bond. I know it is for a lot of people. I just never got onto that train until really late, and then by the time I watched it, it was so dated. It wasn't good for me.
It's tough.
So to me, the greatest Bond movie ever made for me, and I know it's very controversial, and GoldenEye is close. It's almost up there, but to me, Casino Royale is the greatest.
You had me worried because I thought you were going to say GoldenEye, and I was going to say, please don't.
It's close.
Okay.
It's close. But Casino Royale, introducing a new, more brutal, a little bit older kind of Bond. Although you go back and look, and he just looked old for his age. But you go back and compare it to the newer movies that
I think he was 38.
No, but he looked older.
Well, the British don't age well.
I'm not going to throw that stereotype out here. But luckily, no one British or British descent listens to this, so we're fine. But to me, a movie that introduces Daniel Craig and introduces this new Bond in black and white, which is just you already know, this is going to be a different take on this character. And introduces his second kill to get his 00 status, not his first, but his second in black and white, and it's brutal. And this one is more brutal, and this one is seemingly a more cold. This is Bond. This is not a Bond that makes jokes about and flirts with women, other than to get his job done. That's what he does.
It's almost like he uses them as a mark versus actually being invested in them.
He does. And, there may be even a question is, does he like women at a certain point in this movie? But obviously with the introduction of Eva Green, he clearly does. And to the point where even in this movie is so insane that it starts with him getting 00 status and him, doing his job. And there's a lot of iconic Bond things that he goes through. and then to the point where he quits being a double O because he's fell in love. That's about a kind of a character arc we have in just this first movie. But yeah, there's tragedy in this movie. There's a ton of action in this movie. It is sleek. It is the Bond that we, maybe not the Bond we wanted, but the Bond that we needed. This guy was
Good.
and I think it was the greatest Bond movie ever
You know what?
made.
It was what I noticed watching the other Bonds, like the Sean Connery, Roger Moore, Timothy Dalton, even. That's right, Destro. That's for you.
Oh, have you seen In Living Daylights yet?
Not yet, but I've seen bits and pieces just over the years.
Yeah.
So what stands out about this Bond, Casino Royale, compared to the others, is it's bright and it's vibrant. Like there's a lot of saturated colors. Like when they're on the beach, when he's in Monte Carlo, I think it is. When he's coming out of the water, he's just got his little trunks on.
Mm-hmm.
Like the water is really blue, the sun is shining, it's bright. They manipulate the light, through blocking and all of that to make everything look like a vacation. It was, but the whole movie's like that. Even in the end when, the turn happens with Vesper, like she's got this like vibrant, bright cherry red dress on. Like
red dress.
all the colors that pop,
They really pop.
really pop. Yeah,
They do, and it's a tonal thing because from the very beginning that they're going to use the atmosphere to tell the story with the black and white and the choice of that and the filters that they use. You're right. It's like a nice shiny new toy in some parts of it, but also the action scenes are underrated. They had some of the best action scenes in the Bond movie ever. We talk about a lot of people didn't even know what parkour was prior to this movie, and it does some amazing the brutalness of Bond's pursuit of the parkour guy, where the parkour guy does it so gracefully, and you see Bond literally running through walls and things like that to get the objective. It speaks to his approach as a double O, that's his approach to these scenes is violence. Like it's just more brute force than it is trying to be graceful, and it portrays that through a lot of it. But they also are able to still, like, I'll sum up with this, rope in a lot of the quintessential Bond things, so like him being in a tux, him playing Texas Hold'em to the Baccarat, but the card game that they're playing, it has a great Bond feel too.
It does.
So they marriage those perfectly.
Agreed. I love that movie. It's probably in my top 15 all time.
Love it.
So we talked about how like saturated and bright and vibrant this movie is. It's like you're on vacation and just having a blast with Bond. So we're going to go to a less saturated world universe, on Arrakis, where it's a world full of spice, and that's the universal currency in this universe of Dune. And so we're talking about Dune 2.
That's on my list too.
Yeah.
But
I wanted to make sure I got to it first.
You are better to speak on it than me. So go ahead, please.
This movie was also, if you've heard any of our previous podcasts, this movie was on two lists we've previously done. It was on the most anticipated list of 2024, and then it was also on the podcast that ended last year, which was the best movies of 2024. To me, it's one of the best sequels of all time, in my opinion. This just happens to be number 2 in what is going to be a supposed trilogy.
Now, my question to you, and the question to myself was, what makes this so much better than 1?
To me, 1 is just a complete setup to everything that happens in 2.
It is. It's a lot of exposition.
It's a lot of exposition, a lot of world story building, a lot of character introductions, a lot of history about what spice is, like why spice is so important. You've got, I was at the deacon. It's not the deacon. The Baron. Was played by Stellan Skarsgård in the first one and the second
overly
one.
bloated,
Yeah, the visuals, the director of this is Denis Villeneuve. He's one of my favorite new directors of all time. He's quickly rising the ranks.
He's right down in your wheelhouse.
He is, man. This guy, he has a vision. He knows how to execute his vision, which is something we've talked about briefly before. It's important as a director, to have a vision, but not just to have it, but know how to execute it. And every shot in this movie, to me, like we talk about often, every shot in this movie could be like a still, a frame of the movie could be a painting.
Could be hanging up in the Louvre.
It does. Like I've watched this movie and certain clips of this movie on YouTube just for specific scenes because of how cinematic they look. The way he uses shadows and silhouettes and light on a planet that's just sand, and there's just machines that are like like harvesting the spice. But the story is so rich. Like it's something I would like to dive into because I know there's like a plethora of books, and I know that Dune 1 and 2 basically encompass the first book, and then they are actually kind of developing the script for the third Dune, which is going to be Dune Messiah, which is one book in itself. But to me, again, this is the best payoff to a first film I've ever seen in any franchise. Like the setup was perfect, introduction to the characters. It's a lot of information, like you said, but after seeing it, the second one you can kind of just settle in from the opening frame and just enjoy what happens for the next almost 3 hours. You don't have to worry about, okay, well, who is this? Why are they doing this? What is spice? You already have that information prior from seeing Dune 1. This is not a movie you can just jump into with 2. Whereas some of these maybe you could, like a Batman or a Superman maybe even. But with this movie, you have to see Dune 1 to appreciate 2, to understand 2, and to really see what's happening story-wise. Because there's so many moving pieces in the second one.
It is dense.
It's very dense.
With exposition and what you need to know about these characters. Like I've seen it and I still don't fully.
Really?
I'm still sometimes like, who, what, who, what's this? But I'm just enjoying the visuals.
Yeah.
But for me, too, was like the Timothy Chalamet character was kind of introduced in one as what he could be, what he is. We don't know if he is the savior or not. Is he this thing that we think that he is? And in 2, it's more of that his development and like stepping into the role of the savior character. That's what the main part of this is. And one of the things that really helped to seal that movie 2 is better than 1 for me was Austin Butler. Like his introduction into this, so different, so wild from his Elvis portrayal. Like the total opposite, but like extreme.
Yeah.
Really made me appreciate him as an actor more so. But that looming threat that was coming out of that was really impressive. That took it to another level for me. But I think it's just taking the next step in the Chalamet character's development was what was exciting for me.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. And again, Hans Zimmer scored this, so he played a lot of the motifs from this movie in his concert that I saw. The other thing I wanted to say too is, I said this before, and I'll just keep saying it over and over. Star Wars, the original 3 that were in terms of when it was released, 40 plus years ago, and I think so. We've had multi generations come and go since then. I think this is going to be this generation's Star Wars. There are going to be people who are 4, 5, and 6 years old who saw Dune 1, and they get a little older, they'll go back and rewatch it because they're not going to grasp all the concepts that are introduced. They'll wait till they're 10, 11, 12, see Dune 1, and then they're going to go see Dune 2, and then by that time Dune 3 I'm sure will be out. And this will be their version of Star Wars. This will be their Star Wars.
Yeah, to be, you've said it before. You think by the end of this could be the greatest trilogy ever made.
I truly believe
so.
so.
In your category.
Yeah.
I'm almost there with you. They're going to really have to get me and nail me with 3, but if they can do that, if they can fulfill the promises, what they have for Chalamet's character and show him at basically like Luke Skywalker at full Jedi, if they can show that with Chalamet's character, I am really super excited about what this might be.
So am I.
All right. My last one on my list, because you've sniped about 5 of them, which is fine. No. The last one on my list, I'm not going to say much about because we haven't really talked about Star Trek between me and you. I don't think you're a Trekkie based on the things that we've talked.
So,
well, please go ahead.
So if you're talking about Star Wars or Star Trek, I lean more towards Star Trek. But I wouldn't say I'm a Star Trek. Like, I'm not deep into the lore. I haven't watched all of the different variations of a Star Trek show. I know that they all exist. I'm probably more familiar with the Next Generation because my dad was a big fan, and so I just, as like father-son stuff, when he watched it in the 80s going into the 90s, I watched them.
Yeah.
And I'm a fan of the old Shatner series back in the 70s, 60s, 70s.
They call it the original series.
Yeah, because my dad, again, he would watch that late at night. I would stay up with him and watch that.
That's nice.
So I gravitate more towards that, just because of it's a relational thing.
Yeah.
My dad watched it. I watched it.
So you might not be a Trekkie, but you're probably as close to one that is a Trekkie. Sounds like to me because you've seen a lot.
Yeah.
So as a person, I am definitely a Trekkie. I've seen every movie. I've seen every television show except for a couple. DS9, I haven't seen them all. And then I even know what DS9 is, so I guess it's pretty clear what I'm. And the newer ones, I've seen Brave New World's really my favorite of the new ones, but I've seen the Picard series. There was 3 seasons, but the one with
Michelle Yeoh.
yes, that one I skipped. But her introduction was a different Star Trek series, and I didn't. I only watched a couple seasons of that.
Okay.
And I was kind of off that train. But so I've seen a lot, and to me, still, the movie Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan from 1982 is the greatest Star Trek movie.
I'm loving this
Ever
choice.
made.
I'm so glad you
Ever
brought
made.
this up.
And look, the just to give a little brief history of Star Trek, it came out the original series with William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy. That was a television series. I believe it only lasted 3 seasons back in the late '60s, and it got canceled. And then it was done. It was supposed to be done and canceled, and they'd all moved on. But this was the era of reruns, and reruns started to happen, and so people started to fall in love with Star Trek again, or for the very first time through reruns. That sparked a first movie with Star Trek: The Motion Picture, and that movie did so well it sparked a ton of other movies, five in total of the original cast movies, and obviously Star Trek: The Next Generation, which would come in '88, and then that would spur a whole other bunch of not only more seasons, which was 7 more seasons of Next Generation, but movies. I think 4 Next Generation, maybe 5, 4 Next Generation movies, plus DS9, plus Star Trek Voyager, plus Enterprise, plus all the new ones that have just come out, plus the J.J. Abrams Star Trek. It just spurred everything. But still, despite all of that, the original cast in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, I think is undoubtedly universally seen as the greatest Star Trek movie made so far. And that is mainly due to the epic battle with Khan. Now, they really tried to reproduce this in the J.J. Abrams movie with Into Darkness, and it failed to do that with Benedict Cumberbatch. Although I liked Cumberbatch's acting, and a lot of people don't, in that particular movie. I was fine with it, but it doesn't match up to Ricardo Montalban and his portrayal of Khan, and the iconic really scene between William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, where Spock sacrifices his life, and Shatner's yelling "Khan." In the J.J. Abrams version of it, they switched it, and because it's a different alternate timeline, and they made it Spock being the one yelling "Khan" with Chris Pine's James Kirk dying instead. So they flipped it. And the Khan just wasn't the same.
It wasn't. I agree.
So you just didn't feel it. But the William Shatner Khan is iconic, and although they would bring Spock back in later the next movie through some crazy means, you got to make that bread. This is still, I think, seen as one of the most iconic films. Not only just for its time, but because of that ending and the killing off of Spock, a beloved character in the franchise.
Again, the villain wins again.
And the villain went well, yeah, but we're able to get his get his comeuppance within the movie,
right?
Least, you know what I mean? It's not like see you in the next one, and
right? You're
3
right.
years later, you're like, did he get him? Does it? Yeah. So,
and if I remember correctly, I didn't see this episode, but I read somewhere that Ricardo Montalban's Khan was actually in the actual series first.
Yeah, I think yes. I guess as Khan, I can't remember if it was him or another character, but maybe not. Maybe it is Khan. That's a strange callback, but it worked.
Yeah,
it worked, and but no, people. The Klingons look different in the TV series. A lot of things seem different.
Yeah.
And it was it was the late '60s. It was like it was just a different kind of time, and the movies had a whole different tone. They took it more seriously in the movies. The acting, and they took it like a serious in the television show, but there was a camp too.
It was
those in the look, especially in the look of it, and it was more nice and shiny.
Well, because you went from the '60s to the '80s, and in the '80s there was a big shift cinematically where they were making more serious, dark and gritty films. And I think they wanted to really highlight, hey, this guy's really dangerous,
Oh, and they did.
Yeah.
And it was one of the best, not just Star Trek villains, but villains of all time.
You have to remember too, like back then we weren't, as audiences, we're not used to characters dying. So back then, it probably felt finite. When we lost Spock, we're like, oh, this is it. When Han Solo was frozen in carbonite, we don't know what's gonna. We think he might really be dead. We don't know.
Yeah.
So that was there was like an early age of killing off or putting like beloved characters in like real peril, where audiences were like, well, we're probably never gonna see this person again.
And remember, too, and because I haven't heard a lot about this, and then people that are older that will probably are definitely more educated about this than I am. But I don't think there were a lot of television shows becoming movies.
Also,
and
that,
then,
yeah.
and not only that, retaining all of those characters and then spawning off several sequels. That's unheard of. So to take a beloved character from the television show that people universally seem to love and to kill them off, it was shocking.
It was.
And that's what you want, that shock value.
I still love that movie to this day.
Yeah.
It's high replay value for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent choice. I'm so glad you brought that up.
All right, so now you're going to finish off with everything you got, full both barrels.
All right, so
I'm done with mine.
I got two. I'm not going to rush, but I'm going to kind of speed up things.
No need to rush.
The best Wolverine is The Wolverine from 2013. We'll bring in James Mangold as the director. I mean, look, listen.
Wait, it's not Logan?
Not to me.
Ooh, that's controversial.
As much as I love Logan, to me, I mean, obviously that movie was touted as the Wolverine farewell, the Hugh Jackman farewell. I don't like the goodbye stuff, you know. And of course, at that time, I had no knowledge of that. When the Wolverine comes out, I still have the bad taste of Wolverine Origins in my mouth. So when I saw the trailer for this, and I know this is like deep Logan lore, he actually does go to Japan, and a lot of what happens in the movie happens in the comics. So I was somewhat familiar with that. So when I found out they were doing this particular story, I was like, I'm all in. And then, of course, I see it, and he's fighting off ninjas, and there's that iconic shot where he's got all the arrows in his back.
And he is massive in this movie. You go back and
jacked.
that is Jackman.
Jackman is jacked.
Dude, he is just a big load of man meat. I'm just saying that. No Diddy.
Oh,
right?
Nice.
No, he is. He's just like a huge, like I think the biggest he's ever been in that movie. It's insane.
I think that was the movie in the Wolverine franchise where there's a lot of the public knowledge was made about what he did to get in shape and how he deprived himself of water to make his muscles look more refined.
You dehydrate yourself right before.
Yeah, and how he would to get into character, he would take cold showers purposely. To where all he wanted to do was scream and rage like Wolverine, but he couldn't. So he was that's how he got into character for this movie.
Jumping out of a cold shower, wiping real down quickly, and go action.
Action.
That's insane.
I guess whatever it takes. I mean, to me, like you said, it
method
paid off.
Acting all the way. Let's do it.
Like to me, the story itself, I think they could have done spin-offs and just another whole extra movie just off of this particular story, because you introduce a potential love interest in Mariko, the one female character, and then you have the other character who's like a samurai kind of, but she can see the future to some degree.
A psychic samurai.
Yeah, I wanted to know way more about her.
Yeah.
And then of course you have samurai. I have a fascination with samurai. I need to watch the TV show. But to have Wolverine placed in that world, it seems like it fits. It fits perfectly. And the story of the guy he initially saved when he was locked up back in, I think it was Nagasaki, when the bomb went off. Mm-hmm. That guy coming back and basically wanting Logan's healing for himself to stay young.
Under the guise of, I'm going to help you.
Yeah. I loved all that. To me, that's a way better story even than Logan. I know, and I love Logan. Mm-hmm. That's a great 1-2 combo in that whole Logan history. Even X-Men 2, But to me, Logan's the one. If those two are on TV, if I got to pick one, I'm going to pick the Wolverine.
All right.
I don't want to cry. We already did that episode before. And I don't want to watch the movie knowing
this is coming out. Not even close to when that's coming out. Don't refer to old podcasts.
So, yeah, Wolverine. The Wolverine is my favorite. Also, cinematically, James Mangold's choices with the camera.
Mangold, I forgot.
Yeah, amazing. I love it. And then to end my list, Fast Five.
Yes, I was thinking about that. Was it better than the original? Do you think it is?
I think it is, only because it's before the franchise goes too far off the rails. It's essentially the Avengers of this universe. We bring back past characters from other entries in the franchise. They bring back Han in 4, but they bring back again in this. He's a fan favorite. They bring back, Roman, Pierce, and Ted.
It's the Ocean's 11 of car
Okay,
movies.
Ocean's 11 or Avengers, whatever you want to call it. Whatever, Ocean's 11 is less action, more drama. That's why I chose the Avengers. But it's still believable for the most part, everything that happens. I remember when I saw
Wait, is that the one where they have the
go to Brazil.
the
Remember?
safe
Yeah.
that's on chains
And
between two cars?
people were like, "Oh, that's not real," and then of course the behind the scenes comes out, and they
Forget
really
what's
did
in
it.
what? You know what I mean?
Oh man, I'm very familiar with the whole
Look,
Fast and
I'm a
Furious.
guy that loves Tokyo Drift.
I do too.
And Too Fast, Too Furious by John Singleton.
Yeah.
I love those movies, so I'm not the greatest judge.
I have
of
a greater
Fast and
appreciation for Too Fast, Too Furious after seeing it like more rewatches.
Furious. Yeah.
Tokyo Drift, I've always had like a special place for because like I really feel like they did a good job of showing like Japanese culture and drift culture because that was a
Yes.
real thing at that time.
What's DK stand?
Donkey Kong, no, but Fast Five to me is the culmination of what the first 4 movies were building up to. Whether they knew that's what they were going to do or not, to me is like the perfect blend of cars, action, and then just having that cast come together. Like it's like one of the things you would never think you would ever see. Like you talk about the Avengers, we never thought we'd see all these characters come together.
That's true.
It's kind of the same thing, and it's like I said, this is before they really start to go off the rail, off the deep end with these guys being like invincible special agents. So
Does this have the cliffhanger of Letty? Is a different one? Because I know 5 introduced The Rock for the first time.
yes, it does, and that's in the post credit scene where they reveal that she is still alive.
That's why the cliffhanger is like,
So I think that was like my top 11 or 12, but there you go.
Well, we had a lot. You had a lot to make up for because you took a lot off my list.
And I knew there would be. So there you go.
Did you? No honorable mention. Nothing else. You got them all.
We mentioned every Lord of the Rings, Two Towers.
That's tough.
Why?
I think I don't know. The first one's hard to beat to me.
I mean, come on.
But
the battle,
3 is great because it ends it so beautifully.
yeah, but I tell
the
people all the time,
battle's
my
huge.
favorite is Twin Tower, or not Two Towers. Sorry.
Yeah, 2 times.
The Battle of Helm's Deep is epic to me. They fight like all night into the day, and then Gandalf, who you think is dead, comes back and rescues
It
them.
all meshes together for me, though. You know what I mean? I forget where the battles took place sometimes. Yeah, like is it 2? Is it 3? Is it, where's the gold with the dragon? I forget where that one is.
I had Infinity War, but we kind of talked about that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And then John Wick 4. To me, it's the best one out of the
I see why.
after the first one. It's the best of the 2, 3, 4.
That dog. All right, well, that's our list of the top sequels, we believe anyway, the top sequels that were better than the original. Man, we had a lot. I think we covered a lot of that.
We did.
That was good. That was a good discussion there. But surely there's some people at home that have some sequels in mind that we did not mention. And so if you do, we want to hear about them.
Jason's at home yelling Lethal Weapon 2, for sure.
Well, then make your argument, sir. Get in our social media. We're on X. We're on Twitter, obviously, the X, Facebook, and Instagram. Go to Top Movie Pod or Top Movie Podcast with Mike and Mulley. On all of those, you can search, or we do have a Linktree page that you can find with our title on it. That you could find all of our links. We're streaming to like 5 or 6 different streaming services, and including YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and probably just one that you're listening on right now, whatever that is. Mm-hmm. But we want to hear your top 10 list as a reaction. So what are your top 10 sequels that are better than the original? Where did we go wrong? Where did we go right? Reach out to us on social media. Let us know what your lists are and fill us in. We want to hear your side of things. Right, Mike?
That's it. That's true. Quick tease, because we're basically like still kind of in the early kickoff of season 2. Mm-hmm. Depending on when you hear this, maybe not.
Yeah, this
maybe
we'll
be
2026.
You never know, man. You never know. That's the thing about us. You don't know what we're gonna do, what Mike's gonna say.
Inconsistency, the key to our podcast.
That is the key. Inconsistency is the
You
path
never know.
forward.
It's like a surprise in your inbox.
I'm gonna get that tattooed. Inconsistency is the way forward.
Ooh,
No, but
tattoo?
Jason, who I mentioned on this podcast, I mentioned sometimes.
Jason Statham, good friend of the pod.
No. The Realtor Portraits, episode 1 on Mike's YouTube channel. Mike on the Mic 80. Anyway.
You didn't pay for that promotion.
All right, fine. No, he wants to come on the podcast. He's working on several lists, so he may be like a recurring character.
Oh, you're gonna have to prove yourself, young Padawan.
But I told him we were going to do this episode because actually he and I had discussed top 10 sequels like a year ago, and so he's looking forward to this episode.
Mike only has movie friends, so if you don't know about movies, you can't.
If you don't know about
friend.
movies, like if movies is not your thing, yeah, we're not going to be friends.
You have to say a secret code word in order to even get into his circle of friends, and it's movie related, right?
Yes.
So, all right. That's it. That's another one in the bag there, Mike. And we are just rolling along here in season 2, whenever this does come out for you. But again, we come up with these lists and we have this. We would have this conversation anyway. We're just recording it and including you because we think you might find this entertaining. And if you do, let us know if you do. And we hope that you'll join us again one more time. And to end off our podcast, as we always end off, Mike has something wild that he wants to say, and then I have to react to it. So. Mike, what's this wild thing you want to say this time?
If you want to quit your job, make sure you quit in a way where you are remembered forever. Go out in a very powerful, emphatic way. If you want to slap somebody, slap them. If you want to cuss your boss out, cuss them out. If you want to steal corporate property, please do.
That reminded me of a movie scene, Mike. Remy Malek was in a movie, I think it was called, you'll know this because I think you liked the movie. Need for Speed, or it was with Jesse Eisenberg, but Jesse
Pinkman from
Breaking Bad.
Breaking Bad, yeah.
Yes, he was the star of that movie. Well, Remy Malek's in that movie, Oscar winner, right? Mm-hmm. And he has the most legendary quitting scene I've ever seen. He not only does he quit, but to do so, he gets butt naked and walks out of his cubicle and a cubicle-laden job, kisses the girl that he has a crush on, and walks out naked. It's incredible.
I condone the first half, not the second half, because you will catch a charge.
Yeah, but a naked man can do some crazy things. Obviously, and you're not even looking at what he's doing with his mouth, right?
I wouldn't know.
Golly, that was a tough sentence to say. And that's a tough way to end this podcast. But we're doing it. We're ending it here because Mike has a heart out. So, Mike. Thank you for joining us. You guys, thank you for joining us.
We went from naked man to hard out.
I did, no diddy. And thank you so much for listening. And we're sorry that if you've unfortunately listened all the way to the end, that you had to hear that. But we still hope and beg that you'll join us once again as we go down this rabbit hole of top 10 movie lists created from our love and passion for film. Thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, I'm Mulley, he's Mike, and we out of here.
Peace out.